Hello, everyone. It's Micah. You probably don't know me from my music reaction videos, but if you do know me, you will know me from that more than likely, unless you know me personally. But this is an entirely different channel and an entirely different series of videos going in an entirely different direction. This is a video series, uh, sort of a video diary of my baking journey, and because I needed a name, I kind of just came up with this on the spot. Hopefully, this will stick, and I thought it was just enough of a bit of tiny wordplay that it would work on here, and so that's why we're going to call this for now, because I am just sort of starting up here. We're going to call this Today's Bakeaways, and this is me chronicling my very, very amateur baking journey. So look, I'm going to start off with some ground rules about what this channel is and is not. This channel is, in many ways, for me. This is a way for me to hold myself accountable. It's a way for me to also think through and talk through the experiences I'm having while I'm baking. Therefore, there will be a fair amount of navel gazing going on here, so to the extent that this doesn't translate into riveting entertainment on your end, I have to apologize for that. But it's not like my music reactions were really taking off, and so I understand how hard it is to get views. So I'm not necessarily going to be what's the word I almost said mean mugging, but that's not the right term. I'm not going to be mugging for the camera. I'm not going to be pandering to any. I'm not going to be doing weird editing or sound effects or anything like that. This is just going to be me talking about what's happening as I'm trying to bake. So this is not overtly an entertainment channel. Number two, it's not a baking instructional channel, because I am not in any way, shape, form, fashion, or even the hint of a professional baker in any form whatsoever. Did I make that clear enough? I maybe have a knack for following instructions. I have a knack in general. This is the only thing I will allow myself here for understanding the assignment in any given assignment. So to that extent, the fact that I am a rule follower and that I can be very meticulous and detail oriented when I want to be, I think that gives me a little bit of a way in to the world of baking. But in terms of my experience, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. I am not an experienced baker. So if you come here hoping to find baking tips, maybe I'll stumble upon one every now and again, but you're not going to find it. And if you're a professional baker, you can definitely feel free to give me pointers in the comments. I'm more than open to that, but please don't flame me for doing things that are obviously wrong, because I'm still learning. So that's what this channel is, and I'm going to use this first video to kind of set up where I've been, how I got to this point, where I'm ready to launch this video series, and then from then on, I think my format will be to devote one video to each bake that I do. And I will not be baking live in front of you, because I'm not that coordinated, and it takes a lot of focus for me to be able to bake. I'm not a TV personality, and I don't have a camera set up where I can really show you what I'm doing and also verbalize it in an entertaining way. I can barely just look at the camera and have the one task of talking to you about what I have been doing and keeping that straight. So maybe later on I'll experiment with showing you what I'm doing in real time. For now, you're just going to have to rely on the occasional photo of what I was doing during the bake. So this is going to be an intro. Then I'm going to go into each bake, and when I talk about each bake, I'm going to chronicle my general experience with it, my notes on how difficult it was to perform each step, or the challenges I ran into while I was preparing the bake, and I'll also share feedback on how it turned out from my perspective. So that's pretty simply what it is. So how did I get here? Why am I trying to bake, and why am I making a big show of it? Well, where I am now is that I'm trying to fully commit to baking as a really involved hobby. And this is probably the first time in my life I've really committed to any sort of creative hobby that involves any sort of manual labor or any sort of dexterity. I tend to go more into the realm of like writing is my thing. I'll just say that. I like writing and I like music, and I more or less do things that do not involve me actually manipulating physical things in the real world. I've never found that to be my strong point, but baking has kind of low-key fascinated me throughout my life, and over the years it's just kind of gained more and more momentum. And as with many other people, Food Network has kind of fueled my curiosity, and it also has helped make baking into something that's, dare I say it, glamorous. And so that combination of factors has kind of built me up to a point of momentum with this that I'm ready to launch. And it's more or less a New Year's resolution or New Year's sort of idea that this is something I'm going to do for the foreseeable future. So we all know how New Year's resolutions go, so we'll see where we are in 6 months from now. But as of right now, I'm doing okay. My very first experience with baking was like I had very little experience in the kitchen as a child. My parents were overprotective and weren't really eager to let me loose in the kitchen, but I did perform some basic tasks, and I probably helped make a couple of boxed cake mixes at some point when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure I helped out with making instant chocolate pudding. I remember a green mixing bowl and a hand mixer to blend the milk and the pudding mix together. I do remember that happening in the kitchen, but it's not like I'm one of those kids who had the mother or grandmother who was really into baking, and I sat by her side and watched her every move in the kitchen. It was not like that at all in my house, in my life. Baking and cooking food was really just a perfunctory thing that you did more or less to feed yourself. It was not a bonding experience, really. It was, in its way but it was not a super special thing. It was really just another household chore that my mother performed growing up. And so baking was, not a part of my childhood at all. So I don't have any sweet stories to tell about my mom or certainly not my dad. None of my relatives were bakers, and so very little background there and very little interest. The first time I really got it into my head that I might like to bake was I was in a relationship, and it's been 16 to 17 years ago now. I was in a relationship, and my ex, it was the first birthday from when I had met him, and he said that his favorite cake was red velvet cake. So I hatched an idea to bake one from scratch for him. Now, I had never baked anything from scratch, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I found the recipe online. It was Paula Deen's red velvet cake recipe, and it was like the ingredient list was jaw-droppingly long, especially for someone who is used to making things from a box. And when I did make them, it's not like I had made over 5 in my entire life at that point, even from a box. But I was really, really careful. It took me hours upon hours to do this, but I was very, very careful to make the red velvet cake precisely according to the instructions. And it was so detailed and so involved that there was a bit of I developed kind of a fascination, and it's a really almost Zen-like kind of experience going through and carefully measuring things and adding them in very precise steps. So I found myself kind of, despite the fact that I'm not a craftsy person, I was really kind of digging the fact that I was performing all these very intricate little steps. Having a really well-written recipe is very satisfying for me. Knowing that I have something to go by, and if I follow the steps very, very precisely, I will come up with something that's really great. So the red velvet cake was a huge hit, and everyone raved about it, and every baker knows that feeling of satisfaction from when someone enjoys what you've made. So that sort of rush that I got from that was something that I filed away, and even though over the past 15 or so years since then, I haven't really baked a lot. I might bake something from scratch maybe 3 times per year. And it tends to be the same recipes, because once I make something, people will request it over and over. So I made several red velvet cakes. I found the recipe for a key lime cake online, which is it's based off a box cake. So I'm not super hyped up ever to make that one. It seems like a bit of a cheat, and I always have trouble with the texture of the cake, or I should say the structural integrity of that cake. It's very, very moist, so it tends to sink. So, and I've always, even though everyone loves the flavor of the cakes I've made, the structural integrity is almost always subpar. So, but I still enjoy the process of it, and I like getting the positive feedback. So, while baking 2 or 3 times per year, a couple years ago, I invested in a KitchenAid stand mixer, and so gradually over time, I got it in my head that I kind of, when I was ready, when I was able to devote enough mental space to the task of baking, I would really go for it. And over the past several months, I started building some momentum. I started thinking about ways to do this. And I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. So starting back in December, so I guess it's been nearly 2 months ago, I started ordering like really high quality bakeware and very specific tools to help me with baking. And I've been ordering and picking up stuff at the stores, and I've set up a space here in this space, which is my condo. My kitchen is actually on the other side of the camera over here, but I'm going to show you some pictures of my setup. And because this space is a space in my life that entirely belongs to me, that I can manipulate at my pleasure, I have basically turned the kitchen into a baking kitchen. I co-opted a bookshelf from elsewhere. I rehomed all the books that were in the bookshelf, and I turned the bookshelf into a baking rack. So now it's filled with cookbooks and pans and whisks and sifters and everything you can imagine. So I have really kind of gone all in, and on top of that, I've gone online and ordered a couple of secondhand books, and I've also bought some firsthand books. To some degree, I have kind of made a financial commitment, not so much because I had to spend all the money to do it, but in order to sort of hold myself accountable, because I'm a bit of a cheapskate. So if I spend all this money, I'm probably going to have a better chance of following through on actually implementing baking as an integral part of my life. So that's where I am right now. So now I'm going to share with you some of my setup, my reference materials, the things I'm using to begin this baking journey. We're going to start with my resources. Now, I've watched several series of videos online. This particular series, and I'm sorry, this is just a screenshot from my phone. This is a little sloppy, but there's a baking and pastry course from Craftsy with Zoe Francois, and I watched this whole series like twice all the way through, and I've pulled some recipes from the guidebook from this particular instructional series, and I'm going to, and this is a way of like training myself on a wide array of very basic recipes, so I know a little bit about how to make different kinds of things. So currently, I'm in the process. It's on my list of to-dos very soon to make biscuits for the first time. Yes, I've never made biscuits in my life, so should tell you how inexperienced of a baker I am. And also to make muffins. Now, I may have made muffins at some point in the past. I can't specifically recall it, but there's a master muffin recipe. Part of what I want to do is start committing to memory how different things are made, so eventually I could from memory whip up a batch of whatever type of baked good is being requested. So I've got biscuits and muffins on the horizon, and those both come from this, and I'm going to also go through some of the other basic recipes, pie crusts, and probably some cakes as well, but I have a lot more reference materials for cakes besides this. So this is one of my foundational series that I'm using. Maybe if you have comments, if any of you are familiar with Zoe or her work or this instructional series, maybe you can let me know in the comments if there's anything that's wonky about her methods, because everybody has their idiosyncrasies and like things that work for them but don't necessarily translate into larger, don't translate as well to a larger audience, and maybe just something that works for them personally more so. But whatever feedback you have on that's one of the foundational materials that I've been using. Something else that I've been using foundationally right now, and this is more or less random, but I have this book here. This is a book that I think came out within the past year, and I picked it up. It was a bit of a bait and switch. Like, I got all excited because the presentation of this book is really nice. And don't get me wrong, I've read the instructional part of this book, but at the end of the day, this Sally's Baking 101, at the end of the day, this isn't an instructional book so much as a collection of recipes. It's a cookbook sort of dressed up to be like, this covers all the bases of baking. And to some degree, there are recipes for different categories in here. So I do think it's a really good purchase. And so far, I've only done recipes out of this book. As of the recording of this video, I've done 3 bakes this year so far, and I will be recounting those in the separate videos, and all 3 of those are out of this book. And actually I've done 4. I did one sort of, and so maybe I may even do a video because I did shortbread cookies, but I did that more as an improv thing, and I didn't do it in my carefully controlled kitchen environment here. I kind of threw it together at my house, and so but anyway, I have done 4 recipes out of the book. It's a delightful book, but the whole 101 is it's not, bait and switch is probably too strong a term, but this is not a course in baking. It gives you a few pointers at the beginning of the book, and then it gives you, I think it's actually technically 101 recipes, so it kind of like plays on the idea that it's a course, but it wasn't nearly as comprehensive as I was sort of thinking it was when I was perusing it in the bookstore before I bought it. But I'm not mad about it. I am going to run with this, and I'm going to. My goal is to bake my way through this book and see and do as many of these recipes as possible, because they do include a lot of different categories like brunch bakes. There's a fair amount of savory stuff in here. So it'll help me get a good breadth of baking experience as well. So those are my 2 primary references so far for what I'm doing practically in the kitchen. But I've also got a couple of other books. This one I have with me. This is a book that came out within the past couple of years. There's been a lot of buzz about it from what I understand online. It's called Sift. It was originally published in the UK, and now that they published an American version of it. It's a really beautifully laid out and photographed book, and it's supposed to be it really is supposed to be instructional in a lot of ways. It gets really into the chemistry of baking, and it has a lot of really technical recipes in it. I've heard there are some huge, ironically, technical flaws in some of the recipes that cause them to not work, so I'm a little scared about actually baking my way through this book. But there's some super challenging things in here, like desserts, that I'm not at all familiar with I'm not even familiar with the names of some of them. But eventually I want to get to a point where I tackle some of those. Um, I have started reading that book, and that's where I am with that. Then I also went online and bought this book from, and this is probably familiar to any of you who have been to culinary school, or I should say, yeah, because this is a CIA approved textbook. It's an actual textbook on professional baking. Textbooks, I'm such a geek about textbooks. I love the idea of this huge thick book telling me everything I need to know about whatever subject it is. So I have a ridiculous number of textbooks on different subjects in my possession, from physics to anatomy, and I may never ever get around to reading all of them, but I know that if I ever do, I have all the information like right here that I can just dig into and really understand. So I'm also working my way through this book. Currently, I'm on the cake chapter of this book, and what I want to do is put all of the different cake formulas into a spreadsheet so that I can visually understand how the ratios change and to some degree memorize them. That's sort of a goal of mine. Like, cakes are probably where I want to focus. I want to be able to make other desserts, but I really want to be able to master cakes, and that's not a big surprise. That's probably where a majority of aspirational amateur bakers go when it comes to like baking. But baking cakes has been very challenging for me so far. Getting the texture right, because you want a very tender cake, and having to deal with how that there's a trade-off there between the tenderness of the cake and the moistness of the cake on the one hand, and then the structural integrity of it on the other, and I haven't figured it out yet. So that's something that I really want to get better at. So those are some of my materials. I think I may have left something out. I also have the Cake Bible, for a prior edition of the Cake Bible, which, since I want to focus on cakes, I felt like that would be a good investment. But I got a secondhand version of that for under $10, and I got the textbook I just showed you the image of. I actually got that for under $10 as well, because it's a very old edition. But unlike other textbooks where it's very time sensitive, and having an edition that's 20 years old might make it completely worthless, baking hasn't changed enough in like 20 years for me to really think that there's anything earth-shakingly new in the newer editions that cost $120. So I was happy to spend under $10 for a 20-year-old, or however old that version of the textbook is. So I'm trying to be a nerd about it and like working my way through it. I want to start understanding, not just following recipes, but kind of internalizing the ways, the techniques, and in the measurements. So that's where I am. And like I said, I want to focus on cakes. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I wasn't thinking ahead to maybe 3 or 4 years from now, maybe auditioning for one of the competition shows. I feel like my story is very much the ones that they love to kind of highlight on the show. So-and-so just started baking 3 or 4 years ago, and they love taking people from finance and accounting, and I'm an accountant, because it's such the shift. And I'm not saying I'm changing my career, because a lot of these people keep their day jobs, of course, but they're home bakers. They finance by day and master baker by night. I very much doubt that I'll ever get to a level where I would even be able to compete on one of those shows. Like, I'm sure, I don't know what the process is like, but in my head, I'm thinking, anyway, so I'm going to leave that where it is, but I'm just going to say that somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I want to be able to respond to a challenge. Like, if someone challenges me in the same way that those people are challenged on the show to make something in 2 hours from scratch with a bare minimum of preparation, and can I pull it together? So I want to be able to compete in a competitive bake in a competitive way. Um, Even if I don't actually go to a competition anywhere, I would like to be able to pull those things out, because I always find it so fascinating on the baking shows that people are able to do those things. Now, I don't know how much of that is editing. I don't know how much they prep them for it ahead of time sometimes, and like, say, okay, so this is, or give them parameters about, okay, this is the general sort of range of things we could give you one of these 3 challenges, and then they have maybe a few hours to to read up on the different possibilities. Who knows what may be going on behind the scenes, but the idea, at least the idea of being able to whip up anything from memory, just really appeals to me. So that's kind of where I want to be. Now, I don't have any illusions about becoming a master baker. I know that there's a lot of training, time, and probably in most cases money that would be involved in really getting these processes down. And also, I'm not all that great with my hands naturally. At least that's my personal evaluation on that point. So I am starting pretty late. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I am not starting this. I'm not in my 20s for sure. And so I'll just lead with that, and I know that we'll just leave that there. We're not gonna get into age, but I am doing this pretty late. It's been fairly delayed. So getting an earlier start on this would have certainly benefited me. And I also know that there's thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, millions. Let's be honest, millions of people out there who fancy themselves really, really good bakers, and there's people who probably will go to work this week and bake more this week than I will bake in the next 2 years, calling it my hobby, and I'm taking 5 hours to do one recipe. Meanwhile, they're churning out like hundreds of batches of things a week. There's no way that I could ever be at that level. And I have to be okay with that. I'm a bit of a perfectionist and somewhat competitive, so there's part of me that wants to be like really, really good, but there's part of me that has to be realistic about what I actually can do. So I hope you will take this journey with me, and I'm going to hope for the best. This feels pretty ambitious on my end. It's really just baking, and I want to do like 10 bakes per month, and then I'm going to document them here, and we'll just see how it goes. Like, it could be after half a year, who knows? Maybe I will not have made much progress. Maybe I'll lose interest. Who knows where this will go? But just wanted to, while it's happening, I wanted to document it, and so we're kicking off here. So today's Bakeaway is, who the heck knows? Let's see where it goes.